Action cinema. We need to have a chat. What happened to you? Ever since the behemoth $2 million blockbusters burst onto the scene with their big blue beams in the sky, we have seen cities crumble to dust, insane computer-generated battles with so many iconic characters that 20 years ago we could not have even fathomed to see on screen, and a bunch of creepy CGI de-aging technology which will make actors irrelevant in 5 years? But here's my problem. Why do I find the majority of these films to be more bloated and unseemly than a hungry hippopotamus? Look, I like popular movies. I do. They're fine. They're all mostly just fine. But apart from a handful of exceptions, they're all just different shades of alright. And that's okay. I love wasting 2 to 2.5 hours of my finite amount of time on this big blue marble in space to watch super beings punch each other. But tonight, I'm gonna take you all on a little journey. A little journey back in time. Back when action movies used practical effects, where tense situations weren't always undercut with a quippy remark, and where Keanu Reeves was doing his best version of Die Hard. That's right, folks. Tonight, we're gonna talk about Speed. 1994's Speed, or as I like to call it, the unofficial remake of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, apart from being a constant on TNT in my childhood, is the story of a cop, a bus, and a terrorist. After thwarting a plan to ransom the city, Jack Traven gets a call from a terrorist who gives him and us the conceit for the film. There's a bomb on a bus. Once the bus gets up to 50 miles an hour, the bomb is armed. If the bus falls below 50 miles an hour once the bomb is armed, the bus will explode. If anyone tries to get off the bus, the bomb will explode. Incredibly simple, incredibly tense. Before I delve further into this film, I would just like to say that Speed is quite possibly the ultimate Los Angeles movie. Certain films make the cities that they take place in as characters of the movie and represent the city better than any ad to come visit could. Something that speaks to the culture of the town, to the people that live there. New York has films like Ghostbusters. Chicago has the Blues Brothers. And Miami has Bad Boys. And yes, I know that there are many films that take place in Los Angeles, as it is the filmmaking capital of the world, apart from Bollywood. But not many of them delve into the character of the city. Once Sandra Bullock's character says the line,
"I love my car. I miss my car,"
that spoke so deeply to the Angelino in me. Plus, the bus passengers represent the working people of Los Angeles, the sightseeing tourists, those down on their luck just trying to scrape by. Namely, a population of Los Angeles that is severely ignored by most movies that take place here, as most of them would rather portray the Hollywood lifestyle and the glamour of the silver screen. Speed was the directorial debut of Dutch filmmaker Jan de Bont, who made his mark on Hollywood as one of the best cinematographers of his age. De Bont shot films such as Die Hard, The Hunt for Red October, Basic Instinct, Flatliners, and the film that got him scalped by a fucking lion, Roar. Seriously? If you haven't already, read up on the production of Roar. Melanie Griffith got fucking mauled. The film was written by a young Graham Yost who would later have a career writing in television, writing for prestigious miniseries such as Band of Brothers and The Pacific, as well as creating the phenomenal Timothy Olyphant vehicle, Justified. I love Justified. Joss Whedon was brought in for rewrites in the latter stages of the production, and he worked with Yost filling out the characters of the movie. And according to Yost, Whedon was instrumental in crafting the character of Jack Traven as we see it on screen. Early versions of the script had him more quippy, like John McClane in Die Hard, as you can say that Speed is just Die Hard on a bus. But apparently, Whedon turned him from being this maverick hotshot who had one-liners after every situation to being this polite guy just trying not to get anybody killed. And this might be the only time Whedon was brought in to make a character less quippy and more earnest. So, I'm going to be breaking this essay down into 3 distinct sections, as essays do. And each of them are a key element as to why Speed is fantastic, and you should watch it, and you should like it, as it is a fantastic piece of cinematic art. The characters, the story structure, and the filmmaking techniques used to bring the script to life. In Speed, Keanu Reeves plays LAPD officer Jack Traven, and before you say anything, I'm looking at you, I know what you're fucking going to say. Keanu Reeves is a fantastic actor. He was the lead in 2 separate films that changed the landscape of action cinema forever. Or did you think it was just a coincidence that after The Matrix in the early 2000s, every film had leather and kung fu, and after John Wick in the mid to late 2010s, every film had grappling, and I love it. In the director's commentary, DeBont explains that he was able to convince Reeves to take the role by allowing him to do as many of the stunts as he could. This allowance led to Reeves fully diving into the role. He bulked up at Gold's Gym and he shaved his head damn near all the way bald. In this deep dive into the character, Reeves brings something that is rare to be seen in modern action cinema. A hero. No, I don't mean a dude in a super suit who's kind of a dick but saves the world from genocidal aliens. I mean a person whose main goal is to preserve human life. How many of those goddamn superhero movies have the main tension be, will the character save a person's life or X amount of people's lives? Like, at some point when it's the world, it's just too much and too vague. Like a specific group of people to save. Traven is just a regular guy, an everyman cop. But what sets him apart from the majority of everyman cop archetypes that we see, like John McClane in Die Hard, is that instead of being a cheeky asshole, Traven is dedicated to the pursuit of saving lives. And where the audience connects to McClane through the sheer beating that he goes through, the audience connects with Traven by his intellect, his ability to solve problems under pressure. He convinces the terrorist to let the wounded bus driver out of the bus. He decides that the best place to avoid most casualties and to allow the bus to continuously move at 50 miles an hour would be at a runway at LAX. And he figures out the terrorist is watching them on an internal camera, which allows him to fool the antagonist and get the people off safely. Dennis Hopper plays the antagonist, Howard Payne, a former Atlanta bomb squad police officer turned terrorist. After being disfigured on the job, all he gets is a shitty pension and a cheap gold watch. And Hopper brings this brilliant energy to the character of Payne. He's manic. He's crazy.
No, poor people are crazy, Jack. I'm eccentric.
I stand corrected. He's the second character to be seen in the film, and his first actions are to brutally murder the first character we see with a gruesome knife to the head. But Hopper plays his character with what is missing in antagonists in action cinema of today, namely charisma. He's an asshole, a murderer. All he wants is money, but there's just something about the way he portrays the character that makes him mesmerizing and watchable. Maybe it's his callous gallows humor as he toys with Traven every step of the way. Maybe it's the fact that he watches football as he holds the city hostage. Or maybe it's the fact that he slugs coke like he's a diabetic Tony Montana. Hopper is a genius at these types of roles, as would be expected in an actor who played Frank Booth in Blue Velvet, King Koopa in the Mario Brothers movie, and Deacon in Waterworld. What makes him such a dangerous foe is not his callous disregard for human life, not his insanity, although that does, help. It is his planning and resolve. Throughout the film, he single-handedly creates two specific scenarios where massive casualties can happen, and it makes a way so that he can be theoretically in the room with them so he knows what's happening without being blown up himself. And he has made it nigh impossible for anyone to overcome the obstacles he puts in place if they were not the ever-persistent Jack Traven. The rest of the cast is rounded out with Sandra Bullock's Annie, who is a woman who rides the bus as her driver's license was suspended. And later in the film, she essentially becomes Traven's second-in-command. They have pretty solid chemistry when it comes to dealing with the hyper-tense situations that they find themselves in. She starts as a source of conflict to Traven, trying to get him to explain what the hell is happening before he's ready to let people know what is happening. But by the end of the ordeal, she is helping him try to keep his head in the game after he suffers a loss, because she knows that her life and everyone else's life depends on Traven staying focused. Their romantic subplot seems stapled on, but that could be because the character of Annie went through several different iterations in the scripting process of making Speed, and, it is what it is. Jeff Daniels plays Harry Temple, Traven's partner at the beginning of the film and a bomb expert. After being shot at the beginning of the film, he's put on desk duty, and he spends most of the film trying to figure out who the identity of the bomber is, until he makes an ill-advised house call. Joe Morton, or that son of a bitch who's about to start Skynet, is pitch perfect as Police Lieutenant Herb McMahon. He is Traven and Temple's boss. He's stoic on the job, and he's cheerful and fun off duty. He cares about Traven and has authority over him, but respects him enough to give him enough of a leash so that Traven can figure out what he needs to do on his own, and he always backs his play. Alan Ruck brings a brilliant energy as Doug Stevens, a tourist in LA for the first time. The way he plays cheerful Midwestern is brilliant. Beth Grant, who's been every type of role, is here, and she's playing a passenger who's having quite a bad day in a pretty terrible situation. Also, for a split second, there's Richard Schiff and Patrick Fleischer, character actors. There are those that say Die Hard is a perfect script, and they would be right. But if Die Hard is the mold for the type of film that Speed is, Die Hard walked so that Speed could barrel through a bunch of cars as it exits a freeway. The stakes are higher, and every win the characters have leads to another obstacle that they have to overcome. Case in point, after getting themselves onto what they think is a fully abandoned freeway, they quickly find out that there is a gap in the road because they hadn't finished construction, and they have to jump the bus. To understand why the script is so great, I need to get into story structure. There are many books that have been written that tell you how to write a screenplay. And they all have different phrasing, different words that explain what would make a Hollywood film, but that all breaks down into the 3-act story structure. And a graph of what the 3-act story structure looks like would be this. But with that graph, what do you have? A roadmap. It's like driving from New York to Los Angeles. There are damn near an infinite amount of routes to get you from point A to point B. But before you start your trip, you have to know where you're going. And the cities that you plan to stop on in this extended metaphor are what we like to call plot points. Every film has 7 key plot points. The hook, a quick attention grab that sets the tone, the world, and the story you are about to tell. The inciting incident, the event that sets the main character on a collision course to the main tension. Plot point 1, or the break into Act 2, which concretely sets up the main tension and the story goal. The midpoint, a tiny reversal that makes things more serious. Plot point 2, or the break into Act 3, in which the main tension of Act 2 is resolved and the protagonist is at their lowest point. The climax, where the tension is at its highest and the protagonist confronts the antagonist. And the resolution, how the whole thing ends. And in Speed, the key plot points are as follows. The hook is the elevator sequence. The inciting incident is the phone call after the bomb explodes. Plot point 1, Jack gets on the bus. The midpoint, the first passenger dies. Plot point 2, Jack escapes the bus. There is an emotional dark night of the soul moments before, after he finds out that Harry's been killed, but another secret is most acts are broken up by location. So, yeah, the whole second act takes place on the bus. This is more of a false victory plot point 2, as we later find out that Annie gets kidnapped by Payne. Climax, Jack confronts and kills Payne on a subway. Resolution, Jack speeds up the subway, survives an almost certain death, and he steals a smooch from Sandra Bullock. It's nice, it's clean, I like this story structure. It works. But okay, I hear you, that's just 7 main points in a feature film. If you're writing the script, you need from 90 to 120 pages fully written down, or else you're called a hack. And these plot points can be written down back to back, taking up like a page. How do you fill the rest of that white space in that final draft document you got? Well, let me introduce you to my personal favorite way of outlining a script. The sequence structure. Instead of saving cats or going into stories, hear me out. Every 3-act story consisting of, say, 120 pages, let's just use that as the goal, this is how it breaks down. 30 pages for the first act, 60 pages for the second act, 30 pages for the third act. It's not an exact science, but it's a pretty solid guesstimation. So, in order to fill those pages and to keep the conflict rising, which is the name of the game in screenwriting, you break your script into 8 15-page sequences. 2 in the first act, 4 in the second act, 2 in the third act. And each sequence, you make its own mini-movie. It has a conflict, a goal, and a resolution. Every conflict in the film, whether it be the main tension of the entire movie or a single scene, is posed as a yes or no question. Will Luke rescue the princess? Will John Anderson take the red pill and see just how far down this rabbit hole goes? Will Harry kill Ray? But in sequence structure, that tension, that question, is answered with a yes or no, but. And that but leads to the conflict of the next sequence. I'm not going to delve deeply into every sequence in Speed because who has the time? And this video is already getting pretty goddamn long. But the sequence going from the inciting incident to plot point 1 is a pretty spectacular example of sequence structure. So, Dennis Hopper just blows up Keanu's bus buddy and says that there's a bomb on the bus and yada yada yada. And then tells Keanu the general location of where the bus is. The sequence has a clear conflict. Will Traven make it to the bus? Keanu jumps in his car and drives off. After finding the bus, they hit traffic, so Keanu can't drive next to the bus. He gets out of his car and runs up to the bus and starts banging on the door. The bus driver, now clearing the traffic, drives away, leaving him in the road without a car. He then steals a car and catches up to the bus. He tries to yell to the bus that there is a bomb on it, but the bus driver cannot hear him. He drives in front of the bus and has the guy who he stole the car from write down, "There is a bomb on the bus." When the driver finds this out, he starts to slow down. But Keanu checks his speedometer, they're already over 50 miles an hour. Keanu motions for him to keep driving, and he gets next to the bus. After a little bit of automobile damage, Keanu gets himself onto the bus, and we can get into Act 2. The answer to will Traven make it to the bus is yes, but it's already driving at a speed above 50 miles an hour. So the main tension of Act 2 is, Can they get the passengers off the bus safely without the bus exploding? The conflict of this sequence is clear, and the tugging at the audience emotions of hoping that he will make it to the bus in time and fearing that the bus will explode, it keeps us on the edge of our seats. Someone should really, teach a screenwriting class about this. I don't know. There are 3 key stunts that I would like to highlight in this film that represent the craft brought to the filmmaking process by de Bont. Firstly, the bus explosion at the beginning of the film. This has a fantastic moment where, in a single shot, we watch Traven wave goodbye to the bus driver. Following Traven to his car, the camera pans down the street and we watch the bus explode. Now, to be able to do such a thing in a single shot is something that most audiences of modern tastes might think is quaint, because CGI, you can do a bunch of shit. But this film has the action done with actual stunt work, practical stunt work. So you can't just blow up a bus a dude actually has to drive. But you also want that realism that you see in a single shot, that a guy is driving a bus and then the bus explodes. So, how did he do this? I'm asking, how? Oh wait, right below. What happens in this shot is we watch the bus pass by Keanu, and then once it gets off screen, it turns to another street, away from where the camera will be looking. And when we get to where the camera is looking at the bus, it is a remote control bus that has already been there, and it starts driving away, and it blows up. You gotta be honest, that's pretty fun. Secondly, there's the jump that Keanu makes to get onto the bus. Now, you'll note that I didn't say Traven. I said Keanu, because for this stunt, Reeves actually leapt from a moving car to a moving bus. And, for as much as I can tell, it is his ankles that are being dragged on the bus in this shot. Now, Reeves brought this idea to de Bont, and de Bont disapproved of this idea, as would anyone who would think that their feature film debut would murder or mangle their star actor. So Reeves rehearsed this stunt in secret. So when you watch this shot, imagine de Bont sitting there in Video Village having a fucking cardiac event. And the third stunt that occurs is obviously, it's the bus jump. In modern action cinema, such a stunt wouldn't even be attempted, as could be expected, because in this movie, the first time they tried it, it didn't work, and they ruined the bus, and they had to get a new bus, and they didn't tell the studio. But even that second jump, which, to be clear, is not the actual length of the gap in the freeway in the movie, and it is done in very safe conditions. It went further than expected and crashed on top of a camera, ruining it. The only reason why we have a good shot of the jump landing is because they placed a camera even further down the landing area, so that they could hopefully get every angle. For a film that takes place in extremely tight conditions, the camera is rarely static. We are constantly in motion, which puts us into the emotions of the characters we are watching on screen, connecting to them in the tense situations they find themselves in. We see the faces of everyone in the elevator as they are trapped, fearing that it's going to drop. As we watch Traven and Harry trying to save these people trapped in the elevator, we pan down to see the bombs ready to be detonated, constantly reminding us of the danger. And we follow them as they climb on the small walkway on the roof as they put their plan in motion. Their actions are emphasized by the camera. Even this shot of Mac as he's directing the action, talking on a phone, the camera pans in on him. It's enhancing the audience's tension. And when we finally get to the bus, the little movements in the camera help bring realism to the audience as we watch what happens, reminding us that the bus is constantly in motion. For the most part, when we are with the characters, the camera is moving, even if it is subtle. And in the wide shots, when we get to watch the action, the camera is static, and the only movement is keeping the subject of the shot in the frame. And since we've gotten the bulk of this essay out of the way, let me give you a little bit of stuff that I really like about this movie that didn't have a place in it. Alan Ruck delivering the line,
"It's okay. If you need to, you go right ahead and vomit."
Alan Ruck's character cleaning up Jack Traven's language in this moment.
Fuck me!
Oh darn.
The look the passengers give to the tourist, played by Alan Ruck again, as he says that the police will save them. The scene in which we're driving down the city streets and we're super tense because we see this stroller in the road and the bus crashing through it, and the just sheer relief we feel when we find out it's just full of cans. Dennis Hopper's gross, painful-looking makeup on his hands that were clearly blown up by a bomb. Jeff Daniels telling us exactly what his evening plans are about to be after he was shot in the ass.
I'm gonna go home, have some sex.
And of course, this little bit of visual comedy. So that's why I love Speed, and I think you all should love it too. Look, I'm not going to pretend that it is a perfect movie. It is not. It gets a bit overwritten in the second act when the passengers start arguing with each other. Keanu's performance is wooden at times, but you can maybe see that as like a performance choice, as he is trying to be charismatic and heroic and not being fully comfortable with it as a police officer. But I don't know, I didn't really care for it entirely. And of course, the romantic subplot is thinner than Ash feels like he is if I do not feed him dinner at 5 o'clock sharp. But let's be honest with ourselves. In a world where we are filled with propaganda, film and TV that are full of police good guys massacring scores of bad guys with a father-knows-best attitude as to what the rules are and a brazen disregard for collateral damage, be it property or human life damage, it is a breath of fresh air to have a film who has a hero whose main goal is to save the lives of everyone around him. So that's it. That's the video. That's ending. Like, share, subscribe. Tell me what you like about Speed. Maybe tell me what you want to see next. I've got a couple stuff. Maybe a couple Keanu stuff. I don't know. Am I gonna do a John Wick video? This was fun. Let me know what other things you might want to do. If you want this sort of thing where I get into the structure of it more broadly. Speed rules. Also the movie rules.